Okay. YouTube should be good now. I think we're solid and we can get through that. Okay. So, let's try this again. What's good, everybody? What's going on? We got the live stream working. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite scanning tools, which is Nessus, Tenable's Nessus Vulnerability Scanner. It's great from a few different perspectives. Whether you're a pen tester, you can use it to enumerate and look to see what type of vulnerabilities exist on different boxes. And that was kind of the gist of why we were starting to do this video, because it is in the TryHackMe Pentest Plus learning path. That being said, on the flip side, on the defensive side, on the blue team side, on the IT side, operations, GRC, all that good stuff, Tenable's Nessus Vulnerability Scanner is something that we use quite a bit to ensure that our patching levels are, up to par, and we're doing all the stuff that we need to do as far as maintaining the health of our systems from a patching standpoint. So this video, we're going to talk about a few different things involved with that. The room itself is kind of small, so we should be able to go through that pretty quickly. And I kind of did a whole bunch of stuff ahead of time to make that be a little bit easier. So hopefully we're going to have a good conversation, have some questions, and be able to do a little bit of deeper dive into things that actually are more applicable to the type of things that you would run into in an operational environment. So thanks for sticking around and working through those technical issues that absolutely sucked. Because it sucks so much, if you don't want to like this video, that's completely fine, whatever, but you're here, so I appreciate it. So let's hop over into the desktop over here, and we can kind of get into that. Is the link in the bio? Yes, it is. So the link is in the description of the video for the room that we're using. All right, so let us take a look at a few things here. This room, as I was mentioning before, is a little bit different than the other TryHackMe rooms that we've previously done, in that you actually need to download the Tenable Nessus software onto your computer and connect into TryHackMe's network via OpenVPN to be able to do the scanning that you need to do. Likewise, if you don't want to do that, you can just download it and use it in your home environment, which is perfectly fine, because the cool thing with the Nessus Vulnerability Scanner is that they have a free version of it called Nessus Essentials. It actually can even be used for commercial purposes. So if you are a consultant and you don't want to pay the full license, you can download Nessus Essentials and you can use it for your clients if you're doing some type of spur-of-the-moment vulnerability assessment. There is a limitation with it, though, and that is that you can only do 16 IPs with it. So you're not going to be able to take it and put it into, a medium or large size environment, but you can do almost everything that you need to do from a vulnerability management perspective with it. There is a few things that you can't do with it, and we actually will get into that, and I'll talk about those once we actually get into Nessus and take a look at it. So pretty much I got a link here for where you can go to get it. Kind of talk about how it's similar to Nmap, but like times 1,000. You can do a whole bunch of different things that you can't do with Nmap, including credentialed scanning, which we're going to get into the pros and cons of credentialed scanning versus uncredentialed scanning here in a little bit. So we can go ahead and say we read the description. Not much to that. So this first part here is kind of the installation process, and I'm going to save you a lot of time with this, because to actually go through this probably takes about an hour. Because once you actually download the software, it has to update all the plugins and things like that. And I did that yesterday, so we actually don't need to worry about that. But pretty much what you do is you go to Tenable's website for Nessus Essentials, you put in your name, email, and it will send you an activation code. Awesome. And then depending upon what OS you have that you're going to use, you're going to go to their website to go and download whichever version that you need. So if we actually go to their download page, and take a look at this, you can see that they have stuff that runs on everything. I personally have run this on Windows. I've run it on Mac. Today I'm running it on Ubuntu. I've also run it on Red Hat. And back in the day, I'm not sure if they still do it now, but they used to also have it as an appliance. So you could download it kind of within its own Linux ecosystem. Then you wouldn't have to worry about doing the patching on it. Just make sure that whenever you do download it from here, you are getting the correct version, whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit, because if you don't do that, then yeah, it won't run. You'll get some errors kicking that back. So just something to be aware of. So when you do that, in this case, they have it, just downloading it into your downloads file. And that's exactly what I did. As I said, using Ubuntu, downloaded it there. And then there's a dpackage command to run the install. And then there's a systemctl start command to start this. I am going to point out something that you might want to do if you are downloading this onto something that you're going to continually use. And that is, there are commands that you would want to use to ensure that it starts up every time that you start up your VM or whatever. If you're running on hardware, it'll start up whenever your Linux system boots up. Also worth mentioning, they do give you the MD5 hash for it, so be a good steward of whatever network you are on. If you are downloading software, it is always good to compare the hashes. You could either do this through the command line on a Linux box, or if you're on a Windows box, there's some MD5 hash checker software, or you can even go, there's websites you can go to where you can, compare the hash that you're supposed to get, and then it will scan and do a hash on the file that you downloaded. Just want to make sure that you are downloading what you were expecting to. And we can kind of see, when we go back to the Tenable site, they got checksums for all of it. So that kind of makes it easy. What I did want to mention here was running this command here, the systemctl enable now. And that will, in essence, make sure that every time that you reboot, that Nessus starts automatically. So kind of helpful, so you don't have to go back in and run service start commands whenever you want to do it. So if we take a look, let's see, you go back here, see what else they do. So once you go through all that and the service is started, and we can actually see through my other... So systemctl status, Nessus D is the program. And you can see that it's loaded and it's active, so we know that it's up. We also know that because I have the web browser here, and we got the login prompt for it. But good to know anyway. So let us kind of check these off. As I mentioned, it goes through this pretty quickly, and if we were downloading and installing. Yesterday when I did this, it actually took about 45 minutes to do all of the plugin updates. So be prepared for that if you do go through and do that on your own. Cool thing with Nessus, whenever you're using it, it actually defaults to 8834 as the port that you use to connect to it. So if you try to go over 443, that's not going to work. Off the bat, it does have a self-signed cert, so you do want to make sure that you accept that risk. If you're using it in a operational environment, you actually can load in your own certs into that so that you won't end up having this come up. Now, when we go to actually set it up, we have a few different options here. And so I wanted to kind of hit on this because there are a few different flavors of Nessus that you might use in a few different cases. And this is kind of, again, outside of the realm of pen testing. But for all my IT operations, IT engineering blue team folks, then this is good information to know. So Nessus Essentials is the free one that I mentioned. You have the 16 IP limit. Cool. Nessus Professional is a standalone version of Nessus that you would just use in an environment, or if you are kind of like a consultant, or if you were a pen tester, that's probably what you're going to go with, is Nessus Professional. As we kind of look at some different options that we have moving into larger organizations, there's a few different things. So in essence, with Nessus, whenever you want to do vulnerability scanning and asset discovery in your environment, the default way that we used to do this was you would open up all ports to everywhere in your environment from your Nessus box. This is great because you would be able to see everything. This is bad because if your Nessus box becomes compromised, then you don't really have any ACLs in place that's going to protect against that. So one of the things that Nessus kind of has moved to over the past few years is actually using agents. And these agents can be deployed on Windows boxes, Linux boxes, Unix boxes, almost anything that's not a hardware device, almost anything that's a OS, you can run a Nessus agent on it. The nice thing with that, it only has one port that you use when you are doing your scanning, and it's connecting back to your Nessus server. The difference is, though, that you need to have a specific type of Nessus server to do that, and that's what this Nessus Manager server here would be. So that's kind of something interesting to know. The other option is this Manage Scanner. So again, in larger environments, there's actually a whole Tenable suite of different types of software components. And I've actually written a few different blogs on what these are. So we have like Nessus is the vulnerability scanner. They have kind of a log correlation / SIM tool called LCE. They also have a passive vulnerability scanner that you can kind of feed a port scan, or not port scan, what's the word that I want to use? A copy of traffic off of your switches to this device. And it kind of, will take that copy and run different types of signatures on it, looking for different types of things. All of the data from these different types of applications gets fed up into this server called Security Center. And I think they might have renamed it recently. It might be SC instead of calling it Security Center, because they like to get cute with their acronyms, but still the same thing. And so what Security Center does is it allows you to kind of take all these inputs from the Nessus scanners, from LCE, from NNM, which is that inline server, and put it all together in one dashboard where you're able to look at different types of events, vulnerabilities. You can do a whole bunch of different types of reports, scanning, jobs, all sorts of crazy stuff. So as you're kind of wondering how this would all fit in your environment and different types of protections that you can have, it's kind of good, at least from my perspective, to understand where Nessus fits into that overall hierarchy or ecosystem of Tenable tools. Let's see. Then once we would have selected here Nessus Essentials. The activation code that would have went to our email, we would have put in here. And then you would create a local account for Nessus Essentials to be able to log into it. And here we would end up doing the initialization. This is where I was talking about it will take like 45 minutes to download all the different plugins. Interesting thing with Nessus is they are always updating the plugins. So whenever you think about new vulnerabilities coming out, Nessus is developing new plugins to look for those vulnerabilities. So depending upon where your Nessus server is in your environment, it might have access to the internet back to Tenable's servers to pull down those plugins automatically. If it doesn't, then you want to make sure that you're constantly pulling down offline updates to make sure that your Nessus server is updated. And again, we can go ahead and log in, and this will kind of bring us up to where we are here, and we can hop into this. Any questions on any of that so far? It's kind of a lot of information as far as the install of Nessus, and then kind of, where it fits into the whole Tenable security tools offering. All right, if there's no questions, then we will move on and answer some of the questions in this. So, when we log into this, then we kind of are going to get a few different options for different types of things that we can do. So, host discovery, we're just looking to see what's out there. It's kind of like Nmap in its own way. Basic network scanning, this is going to try and scan for everything. And I'm going to show you what the plugins look like. They have different plugins for different types of operating systems and devices and all sorts of different stuff. And so pretty much that scan is going to go after whatever IP ranges you give it. And it's going to be like, I have no idea what these are. I'm going to try all of my different plugins against that. It is interesting to note with that, though, and I said that we were going to hit on this, the difference between an uncredentialed scan and a credentialed scan. So uncredentialed scan is we don't have anything to log into the device with. So pretty much we're just going to try to do all the plugins that we can do. We're going to get responses back and we're going to match on plugins that we can get from scanning ports and whatever types of headers and things like that, login banners, all that type of stuff that they're going to provide back. But we really aren't going to get that great of an in-depth look at, the vulnerabilities that are on that machine. So a credentialed scan is when we actually have an account that has the right privileges. Normally that's going to be admin privileges or root privileges to be able to log in and run a whole bunch of different types of system checks. Normally what this is going to be doing is looking for patch levels. This is going to be looking for different types of configurations. This is going to be looking for, more specific things within the operating system and configurations that we can't see externally of the device. So pen testers, depending upon the scope of the work that they're doing, they might not actually be given credentials to be able to do that. Within an IT operational environment, you 100% want to be running credentialed scans. That's how you're going to get the most validity with your scans. And then based off of that, then you're going to have an idea of what things need to be patched and what specific configurations and patch levels and things like that you need to be pushing out everywhere within your environment. It's important to note when you are doing that and you are reading scans, you want to take a look to see what type of scan was actually run. Was it credentialed or uncredentialed? Because if it was uncredentialed, you might look at the scan report and be like, oh, we're good, we're solid, there's not that many vulnerabilities. But then when you actually go through the plugins and you look to see what was run, you might end up seeing that all these plugins failed to log in. And then at that case, then you're not really out of the woods. You really just didn't do that thorough of a credentialed scan. So, other types of scans that you can do, looking for malware. You can actually do Yara rules. I'm not sure. I don't think you can do Yara rules on the free version of this. But when you have the paid version, you definitely can do Yara rules. So if you want to look for specific types of hashes and things like that, you can do that. Web application tests. That's going to be a whole bunch of enumeration. We're actually going to do one of those, so that would be good. Credentialed patch audits. Something else that's worth mentioning here is you can do compliance scans. So if you are in an organization where you have to do or have to use certain types of security configuration baselines, so whether it's CIS benchmarks, whether it's DISA-STIGs, whether it's certain types of HIPAA configurations, Tenable has different plugins aren't the right word with that. It has different types of configuration files that you can load and scan against your devices, and it's able to tell you if you have things configured correctly or not. Again, that's an option that's not with the free one, but in most very large organizations that are required to meet those types of benchmarks or having compliance-related requirements, that's a thing that they do quite a bit with Nessus. It's very, very helpful as far as automating that. All right, let's see. That's pretty neat. Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. It's a lot easier than going box to box or, going to look. I mean, think about this. So if you have a Windows environment, and depending upon the type of configurations that you're required to verify, nobody wants to sit there and go through a GPO looking for 300 different types of configurations. It sucks. It's horrible. I've done it. So having a tool that can automate that makes it so much easier. It's not perfect. There are things that it might not be able to get. I've also found that in doing those compliance scans, it's actually, you'll have much better success if you're using the Nessus agent than actually doing it from Nessus itself. So something to kind of think about and be aware of, but it's still pretty cool. All right, let's get through these questions here. What is the name of the button which is used to launch a scan? Well, let's go take a look. New scan. Pretty straightforward, I think. Okay. What side menu option allows us to create custom templates? Don't know if it's maybe... Oh, you see, in here is all that compliance stuff that I was talking about. Let's try... Let's see what the hint is. It's under resources. Okay. I don't know if I see settings. Nope. I don't see resources underneath here. I got a question coming in. So you can do a full scan, like with AV covering all bases. So depends on what you mean by full scan. So you're talking about doing like a scan for malware or a scan for what? So when I was talking full scans, we're talking about vulnerability scans. But if you are looking for a particular type of malware, you can do malware scans. Let me see. Uh-oh. Let's see. Okay, I don't remember seeing where the resources were on that. Let me pull something up real quick and look and see if we can find that. If anybody else can find the answer to that question, that would be cool too. Let's see. So I think, oh, I see. I see what they were trying to get at. Let's go back. So under resources is right in front of my face. Policies. So if you go into policies, you can create custom templates. Okay. What menu allows us to change plugin properties such as hiding them or changing their severity? Plugin rules. To hide or change the severity of a plugin. I don't normally have to deal with that too much. I will be honest though, in most of the environments that I end up working with Nessus, we're using Security Center, and that kind of has its own flavor of being able to do this type of stuff. You do it within Security Center, and then it kind of pushes the rules out to your Nessus scanners. So let's go plugin rules. Okay. In scan templates section, after clicking on new scan, what scan allows you to simply see what hosts are alive? So that was host discovery. If you remember, we go back and we look at that. Host discovery. Yep. One of the most useful scan types, which is considered suitable for any host. Basic network scan, suitable for any host. As Kiki pointed out last time we did this, TryHackMe loves to put the answers for stuff. They try to make it pretty straightforward in their questions. Let's see. What did I say that was? Basic network scan. Scan. Okay. What scan allows you to authenticate to hosts and enumerate missing updates? credentialed patch audit. So why would you do that versus a basic network scan? Well, this might have a bit more limited in the plugins that it's running versus this, which is going to run everything. Let's see, credentialed. Patch audit. Okay, what scan is specifically used for web applications scans? Well, I bet you the name is... Where are you at? Web application tests. Yep. Okay. Bam. All right. So I already started up this box, and I'm going to show you how to do this, and we can wait for it to do it, but I've already done the scan as well, so we can look through the results too, so we don't have to like really wait. So create a new basic scan targeted to the deployment, the VM. What option under basic on the left to set a time for the scan to run? This can be very useful when network congestion is an issue. I already know what the answer for that is going to be scheduled, but let's take a look at this. Okay. So since I said they don't really go too in-depth here, let's walk through these because it's really worth pointing it out. So you're going to name it whatever you want to name it. We're just going to call it that. Give it a name. If you have different folders, you can break it up. This might be helpful if you are doing different jobs or something like that. You want different folders. This is where you put in the targets. So IPs, this can be ranges, subnets, domain names. In this case, it's just going to be a single IP. If you already have a list already created, you can upload that here, which is nice. Schedule is what they were talking about if we wanted to do that during certain times. Now, that actually brings up a very interesting point depending upon what it is that you're doing and the scope of it. So if you're in an operational environment and you are in the blue team, you're on the scanning team, you're doing stuff like that, you might want to schedule your vulnerability scans after hours. That way there's limited impact, possibility of it not actually breaking anything. Depending on what type of scan you're doing, it could break things. Normally you figure that out and then you don't do that ever again. So, but it's good to understand that you can schedule it when there's less folks around that could be impacted if something does go sideways. From a pen testing perspective, you could do the same thing, although you could also schedule something like this. Maybe you actually do want to do it during the day, depending upon the type of host or devices that you're interacting with. You might be able to hide in the noise a bit more if you're doing it when there's more activity going on within the network. It really depends. Notifications, you can have reports sent out and alerts sent out whenever your scan is done. Discovery types. So you can kind of read through some different things here. The important thing with this is determining whether or not you want to hit all the ports, certain ports, popular ports. This is where you would kind of configure that. So if we wanted to go custom, we could go under and set those, or all ports, right? So let's see, what else were we doing there? If we did go custom, then it opens up host discovery, and you can change these, whether you want to do ping methods, depending upon the type of security tools that you have in between you and the host that you're trying to scan. You might want to do different things there. If ICMP is blocked on the network, then it might not be worth running through ICMPs, especially if that's going to take a bit longer. If you have different types of fragile devices, you can do that. If you need to use Wake on LAN, you got some Windows boxes that power down or go into a hibernated state. and you need to wake them to be able to scan them, you can put that in here. Port scanning, whether or not you will consider unscanned ports as closed, how you actually want to do the scanning stuff. This kind of goes back into some of the stuff that we were talking about when we were doing the Nmap rooms. General settings, enumerating ciphers, depends on what type of enumeration that you want to do and whether or not that's important for the purpose that you're using the scanner for. Default, scanning for web vulnerabilities. Default, I think, is going to pretty much do everything except web application stuff, just because that gets a little bit more intensive. Reports. Again, this kind of gives you a little bit of an option as far as like what type of data comes out of your report, and we'll get into what those actually look like by default. Again, if you're using Security Center, then there's a million different reports that you can do. You can get a lot more granular than what you can out of Nessus itself. And then scan types. You have a few different options here. Default, custom, scan for low bandwidth links. The amount of RAM that you have on your box and the CPU that you have will play into this. So you might want to play around with that a little bit. In an operational environment, you can kick this up quite a bit more. And that way that will help make your scan go a lot quicker, especially if you have a lot of hosts that you need to hit. Other section here. They don't cover this at all in this lab, and I think it's important to cover. So if we were doing credentialed scans, this would be where we would go when we put the information in here. So how you want to do it, if you want to use a public key, passwords, all that type of stuff would go in here. So if we were doing SSH, we were going to use a password. We were going to elevate privileges. If it's a Cisco device and you need to use enable, then you can put that there and then put the enable password, right? If it's su or sudo, then you can do that there. This is also important. What's the preferred port for using SSH? And you can get into some interesting issues here depending upon the client version of SSH that you're using. So all things to be aware of. Windows, on the other hand, is a little bit more straightforward, right? You can use hashes, the LM or NTLM hash if you want to. Normally, in places that I've been, we use a password, username, password, and the domain. Just got to make sure that the account that you're using has the proper credentials to do the scans that you need to do, which normally is going to be domain admin. So you also want to make sure that you have other protections in place in Active Directory to monitor that account, because that kind of is an account that could get you in trouble if it's compromised. And some other global credential settings, which are good to know. So let's go ahead and answer these. Create a new basic scan targeting the deployed VM. What was the thing that we could use for timing at certain times? That's a schedule. Under discovery, set the scan type to cover ports 1 through 65,535. So if we go back and we look at the settings, discovery, let's see, that was under discovery. We didn't want to do a custom. We wanted to do port scan all ports. Port scan all ports. Hey man, what's good? Yeah, we're just crushing some Nessus here. Ask any questions if you got any as we're going through this. All right. What scan type can we change under advanced for lower bandwidth connections? And we kind of looked at that already. Scan low bandwidth links. What that's going to do is it's going to limit the amount of simultaneous hosts that you can connect to. So what that means is that the Nessus box will only reach out to 2 hosts at a time, and then it will only do 2 checks at a time. Where if we look at the default, it's going to try to hit 30 different hosts and do 4 different checks or plugins at the same time. Again, like I said, if you bump up your CPU and you bump up your RAM, then you can kind of be a little bit more aggressive with these types of things. But the answer for that was scan low bandwidth links. Okay. With these options set, launch the scan. So we're going to go ahead, hit save. Oh, didn't mean to do that. We're going to get rid of that. And we don't need that either. Let's go back. Settings. We were going to go default. Save. Okay. And now we see that we have this here. Once you have your scan in place, and remember, you can have a whole list of different subnets. So it could be your whole organization could be in this one scan policy. You're just going to hit the launch button. And what you can do is you see once that goes and it kicks off, you're going to get this little running thing moving here. The cool thing with Nessus is that you can click in here and you can see the vulnerabilities as they come up in real time. If you're doing this on Security Center, you can't see it that way. You can only see it once it's done. So we're going to hop into this. Let's see. Let's see if I did something wrong with that. Probably. I might have missed. Let's see. Oh. I'm going to go configure. Did I not? Let's see where we messed up here. Discovery, we did all ports. Scan type default. Let's make sure that we had the right IP, right? Let's see if we can ping this. It doesn't like that. Okay. Not a problem. We can do that and spin this up again. And let's also take a look at our VPN connection here. And we can spin that up again. And there we go. That might have been something when we were having those issues earlier and I had to reboot. It might not have actually come back up the proper way, but no issue. We'll have the IP here in a few seconds. Any questions so far as we're up to this point? Once we get that. Yo, what's up, man? What's good, Devin? Just crushing some Nessus. All right, so let's take this. Let's go back in here. Let's go back to my scans. We're going to edit this again. We'll change this. Configure. We'll rename that. There we go. Rename that. Save it. Just for kicks and giggles, we'll make sure that we can ping it. There we go. Yep. That should be good. Save it. And back to scans. We'll go ahead, kick that off again. There we go. So it already discovered the host, and we can see, as I mentioned, as it's going to go through this and running, we're going to see stuff come up. Now, this is a good time to talk about how they actually score these vulnerabilities. So they have 4 different levels. Well, I should say 5 different levels. They have critical, high, medium, low, and informational. Your initial reaction when looking at this is going to be informational don't matter. It's just giving you information. It's just, yeah, this is how it's configured. Don't be like that. Don't take that as it being something that you don't need to look at. Informational, a lot of times, will give you a lot of information of things, of how they're configured, and in a lot of cases, it might be things that are configured in a way that you don't want them to be configured, which actually are vulnerabilities. So yes, the criticals and highs you need to patch right away. You need to take care of that for sure. But info can have a awful lot of pertinent data in there that could be, well, or could represent something that's misconfigured or could be bad. I think also if you ask any pen testers, they're going to get a lot of useful data out of that info vulnerabilities that come up that are labeled info. And it's going to be one of the main ways that they're going to be doing a lot of enumeration is through the stuff that comes back from that. So be aware of that. The flip side of that is also when you get a whole bunch of criticals, these are all based off of CVSS 3.0, and they kind of rank everything on a 0 to 10 scale. And Nessus kind of takes that 0 to 10 scale and kind of lines these different vulnerability rankings up to that scale. That CVSS score, though, doesn't actually take into account what you have in your environment as far as mitigations or other types of protections. So just because something is a high doesn't mean that it really is that big of a risk in your environment compared to something else that could be a medium that could be a much bigger risk for your environment. Or likewise, something that could be, you have 2 criticals, right? One critical is on, a device that is actually internet facing, has ports that are open to it, versus maybe something else that, yes, the vulnerability exists and is a critical on the device, but the specific service that needs to be running to be able to be exploited maybe isn't actually enabled. And you have different types of data flow protections in place that don't even allow traffic to get to that type of device, specifically from the internet or things like that. So when you're looking at kind of these different scan results, it actually does take a little bit of analysis to figure out which stuff you want to handle and which stuff you want to prioritize. Also, depending upon the type of organization that you work in, sometimes there are different types of compliance requirements as far as how quickly you get those types of vulnerabilities remediated. Normally, criticals you got to do as soon as possible. Highs, you normally have 30 days. Mediums could be 90 or 60 days. Lows could be 90 days or it could be whenever. And then they don't pay attention to infos, even though they should pay attention to infos. So kind of something to just be aware of. So let's take a look at the vulnerabilities that came up here. So what this families here represent is different types of plugins. And so the plugins, as I mentioned, kind of fall into different operating systems or different things like that. In this case, there's general plugins, web server plugins. If this was like, let's say, a Microsoft server and we did a credentialed scan, then there would be a whole bunch of Microsoft plugins that fall under Microsoft family here. Let me tell you count. We see that all these here are info. We can take a look to kind of see what this looks like when we click into it. So keep clicking into it and we see, all right, what is the output that the scanner got from doing this type of scan, right? So pretty much it was able to pull back a banner saying, what version of Apache was running. Gives you the information as far as what port, what service, and the host it was pulled from. Excuse me. When you have multiple hosts that come up for the same finding, then they just will kind of lay them out here. So it would have, let's say that there was 2 hosts that had the same thing coming up, then it would be this IP and then colon and then the next one, right? Let's take a look and see some other stuff. Device type. And this is them trying to figure out what they think it is, and they give you a confidence level the general purpose. It might come back and they're going to be like, oh, it's a Cisco switch, and their confidence level is 85. It's just based off of the different plugins that actually hit for it, and that's how they kind of determine what they think it is. Nessus scan information. This kind of gives you a little bit of data as far as what the scan did, what was enabled. This is useful when troubleshooting scans that aren't working and you want to know what was actually going on. Let's see, anything else? Common platform enumeration. Again, depending upon the purpose of who's running the scan, having an idea of what version of Apache is running on a server could be very useful to you, because then you're going to go and look for particular vulnerabilities for that and then a way to exploit those. Let's see, got a question come in. So all the fixes have to be done manually, no auto fix. So that completely depends upon what the device is and what you're using for your software patching, right? So normally once you get into a good rhythm of doing vulnerability scanning, in an operational environment that really has this figured out really well, they might be doing it bi-weekly or monthly. It should be lining up with your normal patching process, right? So yeah, you're going to have Windows stuff coming up, but you're going to be doing your normal Windows patching. So it's a bit cyclical, and it kind of works together. Every once in a while, you might have a Windows vulnerability that comes up where you have to do the patch, and then there's a registry command that you have to enter as well. But that's not really the fault of Tenable or Nessus for telling you that. If you go and you look up the KB article for that Windows patch, it's going to tell you that you need to do that anyway. So really, this is kind of just consolidating all the different information from multiple vendors into one place and allowing you to have a better view of your entire organization and the things that you need to do. As far as automation, stuff like that, it really depends upon what you have in place for patch management, right? So maybe you have WSIS or SCCM to push out patches automatically. If you got Red Hat servers, maybe using satellite, things like that. Another question coming in. Would this be helpful for an attacker to use? It seems like a pretty noisy scan, so my impression is this is more helpful for blue teamers. So it depends. I think it's a pretty good tool, especially if you're external to an organization. Then you can kind of scan, because that's pretty much what people out on the internet are doing all the time to your organization. So that's one thing. Depending on the scope of your pen test, you might actually have a vulnerability scan as being part of the scope. So most definitely, I mean, I've been through many red team assessments where a Nessus scan is also one of the things that they do. And if it's, I guess you're kind of getting into the conversation of whether or not it's like a white box assessment or a black box assessment. If it's a white box assessment, really they're going to try and get as much information as they possibly can from you to be able to do things. I mean, you might even give them credentials on things, right? Whereas a black box, they're going to start off with almost nothing and just try to get their way through the organization. So I think it's very, very beneficial. I've seen many use it a lot of times. It just depends on the scope and what you're trying to do as far as the pen test or red team, or if it's just a vulnerability assessment that you're paying for an organization to come in and do, or a company to come in and do for your organization. Okay, so that kind of did that. I guess the other thing that is worth noting here is the VPR system, the vulnerability priority rating. So this is something cool that Tenable's done recently. So I kind of was crapping on the CVSS scores and how it's not really ground truth, I guess. Well, Tenable's put out this VPR threat scoring, which kind of takes the CVSS stuff and then looks at other data as far as whether or not exploits have actually been found in the wild, if other organizations have been compromised, if other organizations that are kind of within your industry have been compromised, a few other bits of data, and they kind of combine that and give you a little bit more of a realistic score as far as the severity of the vulnerabilities that they're finding. I find it to be a little bit more agreeable to me than the CVSS. Although, again, you still need to take it into account with what you have in your environment and the protections that you have in place and the mitigations and, a little bit of common sense. CVSS is old school now. It's 100% old school, but I will tell you that I work with some organizations that are grabbing on for dear life and do not want to go the way of the VPR scoring, even though I think I'm trying to remember if NIST put out something recommending going or using VPR. I know that it's been a few different places have been like, yeah, this is a lot better than the CVSS scoring. The other thing with the CVSS scoring is it does have the ability for you to modify the score based off of your own internal variables. The problem is most places don't do that. So they just knee-jerk reaction and go with whatever the default scoring is instead of actually spending the time of trying to figure out what the score really should be. Okay, let's see. Go back and do that. After the scan completes, which vulnerability in the port scanners family can we view? The details to see open ports on this host. That was port scanners. So the Nessus SYN scanner. And it's showing that only port 80 was open. That's kind of like some Nmap stuff that we were talking about before. Let's do that. Let's submit that. Okay, what Apache server version was reported? We actually kind of looked at that. Apache server version 2.4.99. 2.4.99. Okay. Now scanning a web application. Now, we could actually sit and go through this. I think last time when I did it yesterday, it took like 15 minutes. We're not going to do that because I already ran the scan and I've already shown you what it looks like when you actually run a scan and stuff comes in real time, which is what I kind of wanted to show you with this. So I'm cool with not having to go all the way back through that. I will show you kind of what that looks like as far as setting it up, though. Really, it was just changing the type of scan. Did all ports, assessment, and we just did a scan for all web vulnerabilities quick. And this kind of gives you a breakdown of what it's doing, where it's starting to crawl from, how many pages it's crawling max. Gives you a little bit of an idea there. If you go complex, then it's going to go a little bit deeper on some stuff. So we can go back and take a look at actually what came up with this. So we click into this, and now we actually see that we have some mediums come in. Mixed here has some low and some infos. So we can actually go back and take a look at the questions here. What is the plugin ID of the plugin that determines the HTTP server type and version? Mixed. Nope. Let's see. See how that's going to be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see what that is. What's the hint on that? Found on the right, HTTP server type and version. I'm just not seeing it. Is it just like right in front of me and I'm just missing it? There we go. No? Server type and version. Okay. Web servers? If we look at that, so it's Debian, okay, or plugin ID. I'm sorry. The plugin ID. So this is also a good way to search for things, and also a good way to create those policies or plugin rules where you want to avoid certain plugins. You can do that via the plugin ID. So every single plugin has its own unique ID number. 10107. 7. Cool. Well, authentication page is discovered by the scanner that transmits credentials in clear text. Probably some type of PHP. Let's see. Web server transmit clear text credentials. Yep, login.php. Okay, what is the file extension of the config backup? Backup file disclosure. So .bak. Which directory contains example documents? This will be in the PHP example documents. Let's see. So let's see if there was a browsable web directories examples. There we go, right here. I like having this all on the same VM because doing these other TryHackMe rooms, it wouldn't let you copy and paste back and forth, which sucks. At least here, we can go like that. Cool. What vulnerability is this application susceptible to that is associated with X-Frames options? Clickjacking. Yep. Bam. All right. Was there something that we missed? Yeah, we did that. Cool. All right. So that is it. That is all of our intro to Nessus room, which is cool. And yeah, decent amount of folks stuck around the whole time. I appreciate everybody kind of hanging in through all of the technical difficulties, but we ended up getting there. It is worth pointing out, I put the links for the room there. I also had a blog post that I wrote a while back, pretty much going over the fundamentals of Nessus Essentials, and how to go about setting up different types of scans, credentialed scans, Windows scans, SSH, all that type of stuff. I put the link for that in the video description as well. So that's pretty good. Tenable's documentation for this stuff is kind of straightforward, but you know, that it's a free tool that you can download and use it on your home network, you know. Download it. Try it out on your Windows boxes, your Mac, you know, whatever you got in your environment at home, and you can become pretty familiar with it. It's important to understand, you know, how to read the reports and you know, figure out where things are and how you can go about remediating different types of vulnerabilities and stuff like that. So yeah, we got some comments coming in. If you got any questions, throw them in here before we wrap up. Just found out I got COVID. Thanks for having something to keep me distracted and learn at the same time. Oh, well, sorry to hear that. You'll pull through it. Get some rest, but at the same time, make sure that you are, you know, drinking, staying hydrated, taking some vitamins, trying to do stuff, you know, that's good for your body. We had COVID in the house beginning of this year, and so it's stressful for sure. So make sure that you take care of yourself, and yeah, you'll get through it. So and glad we could be a little bit of a distraction. Kiki Awesome job. Appreciate it. I guess it's worth pointing out that Kiki and I are going to do another Try Hack Me room next Wednesday. I think that we said we were going to do the Wireshark one, so looking forward to that. That should be pretty fun. So make sure you come back and check out that one. Good stuff. Learned quite a bit. Awesome. Awesome. I mean, that's the reason for doing it. Hopefully, it was digestible and understandable, and I didn't ramble on too much. I know it is a lot of content to cover, but I think I enjoy using Nessus myself, so I don't mind talking about it. Well, if nobody else has anything else, then we can go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate everybody dropping in and asking questions, leaving comments. Anybody who's watching this after the fact, you can leave some comments on the video, and I'll try to answer your questions for sure. And yeah, if you're still here, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and yeah, go get at it this week, and we will talk soon.